Barry Sanders was often the smallest player on the field, yet his very presence left defenders terrified. He was the kind of running back who didn't just break tackles, he broke ankles and left players reaching for ghosts. But just as he was staking his claim as the greatest running back of all time, he did the unthinkable. He walked away from football, leaving fans, teammates, and the entire NFL stunned. Why would someone so unstoppable leave the game in his prime? This is the legend of Barry Sanders. The highlights, the records, and the mystery of why he left it all behind at the peak of his power. But to make it all make sense, we need to go back to where it all began, Wichita North High School. In his first 3 years of high school ball, Barry barely saw the field, as he was stuck as a backup to the team's star running back, his older brother, Byron Sanders. The coaches saw Barry as undersized, so despite his speed, they questioned if he could handle the physical demands that came with being a running back. And in the limited time he did get to play, he would be put in at receiver. Heading into his senior year, Sanders still wasn't slated as the team's starting running back. It wasn't until the fourth game of the season, when the starter got suspended, that Barry got his chance. And he didn't just seize the moment, he tore it from fate's hands and made it his own. With explosive speed and an otherworldly ability to cut through defenders, he rushed for over 1,300 yards and 17 touchdowns in just 7 games. To put that into perspective, he was averaging nearly 200 yards and over 2 TDs per game. Each time he touched the ball, it seemed like he was capable of breaking off a big play. He would leave defenders grasping at air, faking one way, then darting another, showcasing that incredible lateral movement that would eventually become his signature in the NFL. And as word spread about his on-field performances, local fans started packing the stands just to catch a glimpse of this kid who came out of nowhere and moved with the speed and grace of a pro. But despite the incredible season, Barry was still overlooked by college scouts. Wichita North wasn't known as a football powerhouse, so many recruiters dismissed his success due to the lack of competition. And if his size was an issue for high school coaches, it was that much worse for college scouts. Standing at 5'8", 185 pounds, Barry had a much smaller frame than most of the traditional power backs of his time. But power was never his game. When describing his running style, Sanders said, "I had to be instinctive, creative. I knew I wasn't the biggest guy. I wasn't running anyone over. So I just had to run around them. I just tailored my game." So Barry didn't let those doubts faze him. Deep down, he believed in his ability, and he knew he could thrive if someone just gave him a chance. And eventually, he'd get his opportunity, receiving scholarship offers from 4 schools: Wichita State, Iowa State, Tulsa, and Oklahoma State. Sanders decided that Oklahoma State would give him the best opportunity to showcase his game. So, with that, he took his talents to Stillwater. Little did the Cowboys know, their program was about to be changed forever. Because Barry Sanders' college career at Oklahoma State was nothing short of legendary. But, like his high school journey, his rise to the top took time. For his first 2 seasons, Barry played behind another talented running back, Thurman Thomas, who was an All-American and would go on to become an NFL Hall of Famer. So, Sanders mostly returned kicks and served as Thomas's backup, showing flashes of his potential but never truly getting the spotlight. However, Sanders' patience paid off, because in his junior year, with Thomas off to the NFL, Barry took over as the starting running back.
The big question in Stillwater, can kick returning wizard Barry Sanders replace All-American Thurman Thomas in the backfield?
And what he did that season seemed impossible. In 1988, Barry set an NCAA record by rushing for 2,628 yards, a record that still stands to this day, and scoring 37 touchdowns, another still standing record. And he did it all in just 11 games. Week after week, Sanders put up absurd numbers. He ran for over 300 yards in 4 separate games that season, including a jaw-dropping 332-yard, 5-touchdown game against Texas Tech. It was like he was playing at a completely different speed than everyone else. He was the smallest player on the field, but no one could lay a finger on him. Barry averaged more than 200 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns per game, shattering nearly every record in the book. And that's not even including his 222 yards and 5 touchdowns in just 3 quarters of the Cowboys' bowl game that season. He won the Heisman Trophy in a landslide, capturing the attention of the entire nation and cementing his place as a college football legend. And with that sort of dominance over the college game, it was no surprise to anyone when Barry declared for the 1989 NFL Draft. Apart from his play, his personality made him a perfect pro prospect. He had a humble, no-nonsense attitude. He avoided the spotlight, rarely gave interviews, and let his play do all the talking. No flashy celebrations, he just flipped the ball to the ref and jogged back to the bench, almost like he was bored with how easy football was for him. This quiet confidence paired with his relentless work ethic set him apart. And you can set yourself apart by showing off your sports knowledge, which is why this episode of Blitz is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season.
Show me the money.
It's simple. Just choose which players are going to go off this week and which ones aren't. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long. This week, I'm looking at the board and selecting Josh Allen for more than 250 passing yards and Saquon Barkley for more than 1.5 touchdowns. But don't take my word for it. Hit up your friends and cook up all your hottest takes. You can now win up to 200 times your money on Prize Picks. And the best part is, Prize Picks invented the flex play. So, if your buddy gives you a bad pick and your lineup isn't perfect, you can still cash out. That's right, you can still double your money, even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Prize Picks also offers promotions that can lead to big payouts. So, join now, because this holiday season, they're giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Pixmas. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code THEBLITZ to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code THEBLITZ on the Prize Picks app to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Barry was regarded as one of the most electrifying prospects in years, someone who could change the course of a franchise overnight. But one question still remained for Sanders. It was the same question he had to answer for his entire life: his size. However, the Detroit Lions, who held the 3rd overall pick, needed to take a chance. Their offense had been struggling for years, and they were desperate for a playmaker who could turn things around. So when Barry Sanders was still available at 3, they wasted no time. Teams usually take about 5 minutes to make their choice, but it took the Lions just 13 seconds to get their pick in, making it clear that Sanders was their guy. But for Barry, he found himself in a different position than high school or college. He wasn't coming in underrated or as anyone's backup. He was the 3rd overall pick. He was expected to come in and produce immediately. And produce is exactly what he did. In his rookie season in 1989, Sanders exploded onto the scene. On his very first carry, he rushed for 18 yards, setting the tone for what would become one of the greatest rookie seasons in NFL history. By the end of his rookie year, Barry had rushed for 1,470 yards and 14 touchdowns, averaging an unheard of 5.3 yards per carry. He finished just 10 yards shy of the league's rushing title, and only missed it because he unselfishly opted to sit out the last few plays of the season finale when the Lions had already secured a win. He finished the season being selected to the Pro Bowl, winning Offensive Rookie of the Year, and was also named First Team All-Pro. He was simply a magician on the field. And throughout the early 1990s, Barry consistently delivered standout performances. The problem was that the Lions struggled to build a team around him. Many star running backs of this generation had talented quarterbacks. Emmitt Smith had Troy Aikman, Thurman Thomas had Jim Kelly, and both had a ton of team success because of that. Detroit, on the other hand, couldn't seem to find a good quarterback. They often relied heavily on Barry to create big plays out of nowhere, and he did exactly that. In a league filled with physical, bruising runners, Barry's style was all his own. He didn't overpower defenders, he simply made them miss, using his unparalleled agility, field vision, and ability to stop and change direction in an instant. But still, the Lions weren't having much success. Then, in 1991, things changed. Barry basically single-handedly led the Lions to a 12-4 record and a playoff run that took them to the NFC Championship game, their first championship appearance since the 1950s. And he did it with Rodney Peete and Eric Kramer as his quarterbacks. Sanders rushed for 1,548 yards and 16 touchdowns that season, playing a pivotal role in making Detroit a legitimate contender. In the playoffs, the Lions defeated the Cowboys in the divisional round, largely thanks to Sanders' 69-yard, 1-touchdown performance. However, their run ended in the NFC Championship, where Detroit was defeated by Washington in a game where quarterback Eric Kramer threw 2 interceptions, one of which was a pick six. Although they fell short of a Super Bowl, Barry's contributions made that season one of the most memorable in Lions history. Detroit fans, who had endured years of mediocrity, began to believe that behind Sanders' elite play, they could one day win it all. But as the years passed, the quarterback struggles continued, and while Barry consistently performed at a high level, the Lions struggled with inconsistency and couldn't provide the supporting cast needed to make a deep playoff push. Year after year, Barry put up Hall of Fame numbers, but Detroit underachieved. Despite these challenges, Barry hit several major milestones, including surpassing 10,000 rushing yards in just 91 games, the fastest any player had reached that mark at the time. His 4 rushing titles, 5 1,500-yard seasons, and 6 first-team All-Pro selections demonstrated his dominance, even as defenses progressively focused their entire game plan on stopping him. And while other NFL stars might have pushed for trades to join championship contenders, Sanders remained loyal to Detroit. He reached the peak of his career at age 29 in 1997, a season that remains one of the most remarkable in NFL history. After a slow start to the year, Barry went on an absolute tear, finishing the season with 2,053 rushing yards and becoming only the 3rd player at the time to surpass the 2,000-yard mark. But what made Barry's feat even more astounding was how he did it. He averaged 6.1 yards per carry, set an NFL record with 14 consecutive games of 100 or more rushing yards, and won the NFL MVP award. That 97 season cemented Sanders' legacy as one of the greatest running backs of all time. Fans tuned in every week, not to see if Barry would reach 100 yards. That was a given. It was to see how he'd do it. His unorthodox style was like a dance rather than bruising ground and pound. He was so light on his feet, cutting, jumping, and spinning around defenders. He'd often run around the backfield, at times 20-plus yards behind the line of scrimmage, just to make a play. It was the type of stuff he'd do in Madden on rookie mode. Everyone knew the Lions' passing attack sucked, and they were going to hand it off to Barry. But somehow, no one could stop him. No one except himself. In July of 1999, out of nowhere, Barry Sanders made a decision that would shake the sports world to its core. He announced his retirement from the NFL. At only 30 years old and still considered one of the league's best players, Barry's decision to step away was unbelievable. The announcement came just before training camp, catching everyone off guard. For many, the thought of Sanders leaving when he was so close to breaking Walter Payton's all-time rushing record, needing just over 1,400 yards, was unimaginable. But that, once again, shows who he was as a person. He didn't care to chase the spotlight or records. Yet the question remained, why would one of the greatest players in NFL history retire at the height of his career? And the answer was simple. For years, Barry had been the centerpiece of the Lions' offense, carrying a heavy load for a team that consistently struggled to contend. Despite his individual success, the Lions were unable to surround him with the talent needed to compete for a Super Bowl. In his 10-year career, he played with 10 different quarterbacks. He took one of the worst teams in the league and made them at least average year after year. Though he reached the playoffs multiple times during his career, the team's lack of consistent success was frustrating, to say the least. And in Sanders' eyes, it didn't seem like they were really even trying to change things. In an Amazon Prime documentary called Bye Bye Barry, Sanders said it in his own words, "There was really nothing left to play for. I didn't see us as any kind of serious Super Bowl contender. I felt like I was making a pretty clear decision. I just felt like, in my mind, this is pretty much it." And that was just Barry. The individual accolades meant nothing to him if it didn't come with team success. He even considered retirement as early as 1997, because by that time he'd seen so many of his closest teammates come and go.
There was probably some players that I thought it was a big mistake to get rid of. At the time, and while I played, it was definitely something that hurt.
Players suffer career-ending injuries, and ultimately, he just fell out of love with the game, an effect the Lions would have on many of their greatest players in the years to come. All said, Sanders' greatest personal strengths, his loyalty to a losing franchise, and his humble nature were also the reason the game lost a legend at the peak of his powers. If you enjoyed this video, stick with Blitz, subscribe, and check out some of our other content right here.